deep in the foggy woods at the edge of the world, where the land gives way to the open sea and light is lost in the ever-expanding darkness, a giant of bricks and stones stood tall, towering above the crashing waves, and on these giants' shoulders the Lightkeeper stood proud. Raindrops carried by the whispering wind rhythmically hit the windows again and again in a relaxing song of nature. The Lightkeeper's eyelids grew ever heavier as the coffee was wearing off, but every wave that crashed beneath him was a reminder of his duty, a reminder of his responsibility. The man sat down at a table facing the open sea. Before him lay a piece of paper, an incomplete drawing. He picked a pencil up and continued drawing in a way reminiscent of charcoal art. There were no hard edges on this paper, but rather smooth shades of grey combining to form a whole. With only his fingertips and a pencil, he completed a portrait of a woman. As he admired his work, a tear shined in his eye, lit up by the flickering candlelight. He put the drawing on a shelf amongst other rather ominous scribbles of deformed silhouettes and twisted woods, each drawing bringing the silhouettes and woods closer to what seemed to be the lighthouse. He wiped his eyes and stared into the fog, focusing his gaze on the areas lit up by the beacon. The mesmerizing dance of the bright light battling the darkness had him zone out for a moment. Suddenly, a scream of pure terror brought him back. He jumped to the opposite window, tall treetops being the only thing visible through the thick fog. He turned and looked behind towards the open sea, an inner struggle tugging at his chest. A woman was clearly in danger, lost somewhere in the dark, but can he abandon his post even for a moment? Another scream, this time closer, made his mind up for him. He grabbed a hand lantern and an axe and rushed out. The Lightkeeper pressed on through the encroaching darkness, aided by the moonlight and his lantern. "Hello?" he yelled in no particular direction. "Can you hear me?" he resumed. As he proceeded through the dark woods, the clouds started slowly swallowing the moon. His only ally was being pushed back. Looking back the way he came, he noticed the lighthouse was no longer visible. He tightened his grip on the axe handle as he swallowed heavily, choking down a natural impulse to run. He could sense movement around him, but he could neither see nor hear it. And as the light of the moon was fading, silhouettes of trees and otherworldly creatures started creeping in. He could no longer suppress his urge and started making his way back at a hurried pace. Whatever was in these woods was not friendly, and he would not meet the same fate as the woman. With the last of its rays, the moon shone on the distant lighthouse before falling prey to the clouds. The Lightkeeper charged through the woods and fog. He could feel the darkness behind, getting closer and closer. A silhouette formed in the fog lunged at him. Through sheer luck or great reflexes, maybe a bit of both, his axe swing landed, the creature disappearing back into the fog. Bewilderment took over for a moment, as he could feel a solid hit, yet the creature disappeared just as if it were made of the fog itself. The flame in his lantern started flickering weakly, strangled by the moisture in the air. Fire shot through his veins as panic took over him at the realization that he will lose his last source of light. As the flame breathed its last, the silhouettes in the woods closed in. He screamed in fear and panic, closing his eyes in hope of a quick end. And then, nothing. After a few soul-crushing moments, he built up the courage to open his eyes, the fog dispersing in front of him. He looked around surprised for a moment before turning his gaze down to a bloodied woman laying in his arms. It was her, the girl from the drawing. The expression of shock on his face was quickly washed away. He picked her up on his shoulder and started walking back towards the now visible lighthouse. the blood dripping from his axe burying itself through the branches and leaves on the ground. Approaching the edge of the woods, he saw the remains of ships lying along the coast, and there, before him, at the feet of this Greek giant, he threw the woman's body. He stood there, at the edge of the world, watching her get swallowed by the waves, like so many others before her, the water washing away the blood from the sharp rocks, and with it, the memory of what had happened.